afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to welcome all of you, hello, to our kickoff meeting for the Ad-Hoc Subcommittee on Transformative Technologies and Artificial Intelligence. This meeting is particularly significant for me as it represents our commitment to embracing innovation for all San Diegans, and I want to acknowledge my colleague, Supervisor Anderson, whose partnership in this effort is invaluable as we meet to explore the transformative potential of artificial intelligence in modern governance. Our goal with this subcommittee is really to understand the capabilities and implications of AI technologies in our region, develop a comprehensive AI framework for the county that ensures ethical use, transparency, and accountability, engage with experts and stakeholders to inform our policies and strategies, and to address concerns related to privacy, equity, and access, ensuring that AI benefits all residents, and particularly our county workforce. Today, we will discuss the new potential opportunities and challenges of AI in public service and decision-making process within the County of San Diego. This is an exciting moment for all of us as we talk about the ways AI can enhance efficiency, customer service, transparency, and responsiveness in our county operations. We believe it's vital that as we move forward, we are guided by informed policymaking that aligns with the needs and aspirations of our diverse communities. And I'm really excited today that we have some incredible speakers who will bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the discussion. And so as we're planning for how AI will be used and harnessed by the county, it is crucial that we ensure the advancements we make in AI will benefit all communities across the county, particularly those that have been historically served and marginalized. By prioritizing equitable access to AI-driven public services, we can work to bridge gaps in service delivery, reduce disparities, and create inclusive opportunities for all residents. This commitment to equity is at the heart of our vision for leveraging technology, not just for innovation, but the social good that benefits everyone in our region. I want to express my gratitude again to all of you for being here today. We're excited about the possibilities that lie ahead, and I want you to know that we'll capture all the discussions and ideas shared at this meeting. And with that, I'm going to introduce Tracy Lee from OpenAI, who will start our discussion. Tracy is the lead of state and local government affairs at OpenAI, an organization that is the forefront of AI research and deployment, and she'll provide examples of how AI is being used in various sectors, and will share real-world examples on how it's providing benefits to society. So with that, welcome, Tracy, and we look forward to your insights today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully this works and you only see the main slides. Let me try. Give me 1 second, please. Are you seeing the actual presentation or a behind the scenes view?
It's behind the scenes view.
I think we have behind the scenes.
Okay, sorry. I apologize. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, does this work?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Chairwoman Vargas and Supervisor Anderson, for inviting me here today. My name's Tracy Lee, and I lead our state and local government affairs here at OpenAI. I'm based in San Francisco, but cover our 50-state work across the U.S., engaging with policymakers at all levels of government to help educate and advance AI development efforts. So a little bit about what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to talk a little bit about OpenAI, give you an introduction to our company. I'll provide a product overview and how LLMs, also known as large language models, work. I'll talk about our safe and responsible deployment policies, and then get a little bit into how people use our tools. So first and foremost, OpenAI is a research and deployment company. And we believe, and we're building artificial intelligence that helps people solve hard problems. By helping people with their hard problems, we believe that AI can benefit the most people possible through better healthcare and education, more scientific discoveries, improved productivity, and new tools for creativity. We were founded in 2015 with the mission of creating safe and beneficial artificial general intelligence that benefits all of humanity. In 2017, 2 years later, we realized we needed the capital. We realized we needed additional capital given the resource-intensive nature of generative AI, so began staffing up and adding additional resources to our team. In 2019, we founded our capped for-profit that continues to serve our nonprofit's mission of creating safe and beneficial AGI for all of humanity. So everything we're doing is centered around this mission, and it's critically important to us to get this right. So core to that mission is safety, ensuring broadly distributed benefits, and also understanding the economic impacts that our models have on the organizations and users that interact with them. We have 3 million developers today building on our tools, 92% of Fortune 500 companies using OpenAI's products. We have 200 million active users. We are a San Francisco headquartered company, so California headquartered company with about 1,700 employees today, and about 450 of those include AI researchers. So this is an overview of the products that we have. We're most well known for ChatGPT, which actually launched as a free research preview in November of 2022. We didn't expect its popularity to explode at the time or how it would capture the public's imagination. But here we are a little less than 2 years later, and we've released several products since then, and several organizations, both in the public and private sector, have adopted and implemented our tools. We also offer ChatGPT Plus, which is kind of an advanced version of ChatGPT free version as you know it. It has an additional context window, and it's essentially a paid version. And then we also have ChatGPT Enterprise, which is essentially a version that is used for large organizations. Further, we have the OpenAI API, which is what third-party developers use to build additional tools, or products. So a little bit about how our models work. So we are not a database or search engine, and we don't aim to reproduce or copy data. Instead, our models aim to learn and understand language to predict what comes next and to do so in context. So our models refer back not to the training sets, but instead to numerical values. What's important to our models is a diverse array of sources and ways language appears, not any given source or type of information or data. So as you can see in this slide, the models assign statistical correlations between words. Words are transformed into tokens, and then basically the model is just a series of numbers and code. So this is an illustration of the predictive and statistical analysis that I was just talking about. So developing an advanced language model like GPT-4 or GPT-4o, which is our latest model, requires 1, teaching it intelligence, such as the ability to predict, reason, and solve problems, as well as 2, aligning it to human values and preferences. The former is done in a process called pre-training, which involves showing the model a vast amount of human knowledge over months. To then incorporate human choice into the model, we use a second step called post-training, where we make the model safer and more usable. So here you can see the example given is, it's a beautiful day and then the model assigns statistical analysis to determine what the most likely following word would be. And in this case, it's neighborhood. So we build safety into every step of the model process and incorporate it at every stage of the training and deployment lifecycle. So this shows kind of the various stages of what a model goes through. And I'll start at the top with pre-training. So in this initial phase, the model learns language patterns and intelligence by being exposed to a vast corpus of text. During pre-training, the model practices predicting the next word in sequences from trillions of words, and that teaches it grammar, higher level ideas, and structured thought. thoughts. So for example, when training, if presented with the partial sentence, quote, "The secret to happiness is," end quote, the model learns to predict possible continuations like philosophical ideas or common expressions, which enhance its ability to form coherent responses. So this extensive process requires enormous computational resources, and it can take several months on supercomputers. What we get from pre-training is the base model output. So after pre-training, the base model is capable of solving novel problems and understands a variety of languages, but it's not fully ready for practical use. So for example, if you ask the GPT-4 base model to write a story about a princess, it typically doesn't produce a full story. Instead, it might continue the sentence by predicting the next logical segment like, "about a princess who loves horses." And that demonstrates its ability to extend thoughts, but not necessarily complete tasks as instructed. And so this stage shows that while the base model is intelligent and smart, it actually lacks the finesse for nuanced conversation and can generate content that may be unexpected or inappropriate. So then we move on to the post-training phase. And this is the crucial phase that aligns the model more closely with human values and preferences, which enhances usability and safety. Techniques such as reinforcement learning from human feedback are employed to refine how the model responds, which encourages it to reject harmful queries and improve its conversational abilities. So the model's further trained using carefully selected data sets that exemplify ideal behaviors. This is an active area of research and investment for OpenAI, and we also believe that many people beyond our company will be part of the work of creating data and making design decisions to reflect human values. So before models like GPT-4 are released, they actually undergo modifications to reduce the likelihood of generating undesirable content and to enhance factual accuracy. For instance, improvements made in GPT-4, which is one of our latest models, is significantly less likely to respond to requests for disallowed content and has increased accuracy in providing factual information compared to older models. We also have a process baked in called fine-tuning, which is in addition to the post-training process. And that's where we offer customers the ability to fine-tune our models to accomplish their specific goals, such as writing software code in their proprietary languages, teaching industry-specific knowledge, or aligning the model's tone to their brand. So customers actually do this by preparing data that demonstrates the behavior they're seeking to achieve, and then submitting it for additional post-training. And so assuming the data passes our safety checks, we then make the resulting fine-tuned model available solely to that customer. And similar to other API traffic, we use our monitoring and detection systems to help detect if fine-tuned models violate our usage policies. We then move on to the inference stage, and this is the phase where the model actually takes in new input data. So for example, a question, an image, a prompt, and it generates a corresponding output, an answer, a classification, or creative content. So inference doesn't involve changing the model. It's actually the application of the trained model to generate results. So for example, when you type a question into ChatGPT, the process of generating an answer based on your input is called inference. And then we move on to evaluation. And in the context of Gen AI, it refers to the process of assessing how well a trained model performs on specific tasks. So it typically takes place after both pre-training and post-training and fine-tuning, but before the model is deployed for inference at scale. So evaluation helps determine the accuracy, efficiency, and overall effectiveness of the model. And in summary, it helps ensure that the model performs well in real-world scenarios and meets certain quality standards before it's deployed for inference. And then you'll see here the term red teaming on the right side. And that actually refers to a structured process of testing and probing the model to identify vulnerabilities, weaknesses, or unintended behaviors. Essentially, it's stress testing the model. And so it's a type of adversarial testing where a team deliberately challenges the model by simulating adversarial attacks or presenting difficult, unusual, or malicious inputs to see how the system responds. So moving on to some of our privacy policies. So we don't sell personal information. We also don't monetize through personalized advertisements. We have clear usage and privacy policies on our website that outline all of this. We also provide an opt-out for training data. We remove and mask personal information, and we don't yield information even where a search engine otherwise would. We also do not seek out personal information to train our models, and instead we take steps to reduce the processing of personal information in our training process. So for example, we exclude known sites that aggregate large volumes of personal information. We also deduplicate multiple copies of data contained in training data sets. And what this does is it reduces the likelihood that the model will learn and output information about private individuals. We also filter and remove other content that we don't want our models to learn from, such as hate speech, adult content, sites that contain pirated or illegal content, and spam. And now I want to get into a little bit of how people use our tools. So you'll see here kind of just an overview of the various types of organizations, both large and small, in the public and private sector that have used our tools. Now, I'll start with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So the state of Pennsylvania was actually the first state in the U.S. to pilot ChatGPT Enterprise across its administration to explore various use cases of Gen AI that could be used to help improve delivery of government services. Initial learnings from the ChatGPT Enterprise pilot program with Pennsylvania indicate that employees in the pilot program use ChatGPT to reduce the time spent analyzing project requirements and other elements of their work by roughly 105 minutes per day. An example of this is the state's HR team actually created custom GPTs to streamline processes associated with hiring, classifying, and evaluating roles. So the implementation of ChatGPT has led to significant time savings for the Commonwealth. Tasks that used to take hours were reduced to minutes, and more complex evaluations that took days were completed in a few hours. So this increased operational efficiency has actually helped free up time for more strategic initiatives and supported Governor Shapiro's broader goals to improve hiring processes and make them more efficient across the state. Oops. We also have partnered with the state of Minnesota's enterprise translation offices. So for government services to be truly effective, the state of Minnesota's enterprise translation office believes that they must be accessible to all residents and that removing language barriers is essential to high quality public service. This is actually the founding principle of Minnesota's enterprise translations office, which was established last year to help provide dedicated translation services for the state's executive branch. So in Minnesota, over 20% of their residents primarily speak a language other than English, and those include Spanish, Somali, and Hmong as the top 3 major non-English languages spoken in the state. Language gaps in government communication are a challenge for community health, safety, and trust. So the state's translation process was actually highly decentralized, with each department relying on various methods, including working with external contractors, which led to inconsistent quality, high cost, and delays that could extend up to a month for a single request. Interpretation services were also equally challenging, where limited access to approved interpreters made it hard for people to engage with important legal and community services effectively. So basically, to help address these issues, the ETO began using AI, incorporating ChatGPT as a key pillar of their solution to provide translation services faster, more accurately, and more equitably. So by integrating ChatGPT into the initial stage of translation with meticulous human review and human quality assurance, the ETO has been able to establish a more efficient workflow. And they also are able to optimize for cultural relevance to ensure government messaging is both accessible and inclusive. So for example, with Hmong and Somali, the ETO developed spreadsheets and culturally relevant terms and translations, and they actually incorporated those into their translation GPTs to improve the model's cultural awareness. So they were able to incorporate a process where the Enterprise Translations Office's translation experts review and correct ChatGPT translations before uploading them to custom GPTs for future reference. And so this program success, which I started a few months ago earlier in the year, actually led to a full rollout in July, just 4 months after the beta launch. And now the Enterprise Translations Office is actually supporting a limited pilot project with another state agency to test the use of ChatGPT's voice capabilities for real-time interpretation. And that pilot aims to help improve accessibility for non-English speaking citizens in various live situations and provide faster, more efficient communication for those with limited proficiency. Another use case that I want to talk about in terms of accessibility is our partnership with the organization Be My Eyes. It's a Danish nonprofit that helps people who are blind or low vision. So Be My Eyes actually has an app that allows those who are visually impaired to upload a photo and have a volunteer on the other end describe what's in the photo to help the person understand what they're seeing. But volunteers are not always readily available. So Be My Eyes is now actually using our models that can see and process images to describe for the visually impaired what's in the photo instead of having to find a volunteer. And I'm just going to play a short video to demonstrate.
Is the king in residence at the moment?
Yes. It looks like the king is in residence right now. The royal standard flag is flying above Buckingham Palace, which is a signal that the monarch is present. How exciting to be there while the king is home.
Try and tell me exactly what they're doing right now, please.
Right now, the ducks are gently gliding across the water. They're moving in a fairly relaxed manner, not in a hurry. Occasionally, one of them looking for food, and then pop back up.
I even know when a taxi is coming with its orange light on. I think I'll hail it.
I spotted one just now. It's heading your way on the left side of the road. Get ready to wave it down. Job hailing that taxi. It looks like you're all set to go. That's a good dog right there, leading the way into the taxi. Safe travels.
Great. And another example that I want to give in the healthcare space is actually with the organization Lifespan. So they are Rhode Island's largest healthcare system, and they've been using Gen AI to transform surgical consent forms from dense medical legal jargon into text that's more accessible for all patients to read. So there are 2 doctors who are medical residents at Lifespan who are the pioneers of this work, and they started actually using ChatGPT when preparing for their medical board exams and realized its capability. So health literacy has been linked to patient outcomes, yet medical consent forms, which facilitate and document the doctor-patient conversation around consenting to a procedure, are notoriously complex. In fact, dating back to 1980, the New England Journal of Medicine published research findings that surgical consent forms are written at a college level. So here you see on this slide, essentially, what Lifespan did with ChatGPT. On the top, you see the original surgical consent forms and the language. And then at the bottom, you'll see how ChatGPT kind of transformed that same language into layman's terms. So with over half of Americans reading at or below the 6th grade level, the 2 doctors proposed using GPT-4 to simplify the consent forms from a college reading level to a middle school reading level. And to mitigate the risk of bias and hallucination, Lifespan leadership created a system where GPT-4 would do a first pass, and then legal and medical reviewers would check the output. So Lifespan's now applied this ChatGPT-assisted process to simplify its patient intake forms, chemotherapy consent forms, and more. Since we're a little bit short on time, I'll move over to the use of Gen AI in the education context. So we have partnered with Khan Academy. And so early testing indicates that GPT-4 can help students contextualize greater relevance of what they're studying and help teachers tailor learning to individual students. With Khan Academy, Khanmigo functions both as a virtual tutor for students and a classroom assistant for teachers. It can guide students as they progress through courses and then ask them questions like a tutor would. So AI can help teachers with administrative tasks, which then saves them valuable time so they can focus on what's most important, which is their students. Conmigo specifically has designed many features for teachers, such as Refresh My Knowledge, and that helps educators understand the subjects they may be assisting their learners with on schoolwork. And then for students with disabilities, we actually have speech-to-text capability and speech-to-text and then text-to-speech, which will help improve the learning experience of students with disabilities. And then a little bit more about public higher ed institutions and ChatGPT and OpenAI. So ASU, Arizona State University, is actually the first higher ed institution to collaborate with us. And they're one of the largest public universities in the US, serving over 180,000 students in a given year. I think they offer over 800 degree options. And for 9 straight years, US News and World Report has named ASU the most innovative university in America. And so we've collaborated with them to introduce ChatGPT Enterprise, or ChatGPT EDU, to the university, which empowers faculty and staff to help explore the potential of Gen AI to help with teaching, learning, and discovery. And the goal is to leverage ASU's intense knowledge core, which is the faculty and researchers and staff, to be at the forefront of discovery and implementation. So one of the first things that ASU did when we first collaborated with them was to spark an AI innovation challenge. So in February 2024, the ASU invited faculty and staff to submit proposals for using ChatGPT to maximize their teaching, research, and operations. Submissions required a clear plan for integrating ChatGPT into one of 3 priority areas. One was to support teaching and learning, proposals that enhance the educational experience for students and faculty within a class setting. 2, advancing research for public good. So proposals that support student and faculty-led research that demonstrate a clear path to making meaningful community and planet contributions. And then 3, enhancing the future of work. So proposals that contribute to more positive, productive, and supportive work environment. So we've had significant success with ASU thus far, and they're continuing to explore various ways that the student and faculty can utilize Gen AI on campus. And then finally, one thing I just want to mention, since you're in San Diego, we actually recently announced a partnership with UCSD's Rady School of Management, and they've decided to pilot ChatGPT EDU beginning with their IT department with a focus on workflow optimization, and then with select faculty and staff focusing on teaching and learning. We also are excited to have recently secured a partnership with the UC Office of the President, so with the UC system as a whole, and we should be moving forward with pilots at a variety of different UC campuses in the state. So hopefully that presentation and overview was helpful, and thank you everyone for your time, and thank you for having me today.
Tracy, thank you very much for your presentation. In time, I'd like to introduce Legislative Director from the National on Technology in will of AI, including key state and local levels surrounding AI technology.
Good afternoon.
I can now. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, supervisors, for having also presentation. If you can see. Lovely. Good afternoon. Thank you. I work at the I'm a legislative and tech. I'm here today to talk about artificial intelligence. A bit from your first background. background behind or not. Really the goal here versus that naked government community and our provide some insight into the landscape that are emerging. Which is a good place to primer on artificial intelligence. Is the landscape here. So broadly speaking, this is a timeline that just really chronicles how long artificial intelligence has been a part of our communication systems and early computing systems all the way up to the present. So you'll see here on kind of this simple timeline here from the earliest computers automating very simple routine tasks. We saw AI, or artificially intelligent systems, begin to take hold. And this has really carried on through many of the milestones across the last 70 years. So as we kind of moved on from kind of the cabinet-sized computers to more of the consumer computer sizes, particularly in the revolution of those that took off in the 1980s, through the rise of the internet in the 90s and onwards, we saw a continuation of technological progress that really made AI and automation more routine in our day-to-day interactions with technology. And a few examples of kind of what AI has looked like in kind of historically how it's been developed. If you think about automation in your HVAC or your refrigeration, kind of those automatic signals to cool down if it's a refrigerator or turn on the heat if it's maybe heating. That's one example of AI that's been around for quite some time. More recently, smart devices like automatic lights. So if you walk into a room that's using a motion sensor, maybe it's an auditorium or a gymnasium, you walk in and then the lights suddenly turn on. That's another example of automation and AI. So kind of generally speaking, we've had AI for quite some time, and this has even stayed with us as we've moved through the 2000s and the 2010s, whereas in the 2000s, and this is particularly relevant for county governments, we really saw e-governance begin to take hold. So county governments beginning to move their services and their operations, some of their communications fully online through email, websites, documents, and the like. And then in the 2010s, of course, with the landscape of social media, kind of a new way of society communicating with one another, we've even seen AI kind of transcend through that period in time. So what makes today different? So as we kind of come into the present day and hone in on a lot of the conversation happening around generative AI, I want to make a distinction in terms of what the difference is. So when we're talking about generative AI, what we're really saying is that this is the development of traditional AI systems, but there's a new twist. So these systems have the ability to generate novel content by relying on large language models, data sets, and other methods of machine learning that has been inputted into a model and that it's been trained upon. And this input can vary greatly in terms of its size. You'll see a video kind of playing here. This was my simple way of sharing how quick and fast this technology can work in terms of developing novel outcomes. In this case, I asked it to ask you all a simple question to the Board of Supervisors, which is, how comfortable do you feel with the subject of artificial intelligence? But what's important here is whereas previous systems that may have involved automation or AI in kind of a simpler format, it may have not had the ability to generate something novel using its training. Whereas in the case of generative AI, we see that through this example, although there are many tools, that generative AI is actually leading the way to developing novel content. And there are many terms that you should be familiar with if you're kind of exploring this space for the first time. This next slide here, which I promise is my most text-heavy slide, has a few definitions of some key terms, but the broader kind of landscape here is that it takes time to learn about some of the nuances that are behind some of these new generative AI models. So we've attempted to charter that out for county audiences across the country. So for example, if we think about prompts, which is the definition on the left-hand side, these are simple text commands or queries that you can type or say to a generative AI tool in order to provide it context and guidance. So a good example is in the previous slide, I had asked a chatbot generative AI tool to create a simple question for the county board of supervisors on your level of familiarity or fear of generative AI. That is a prompt I provided it, and they take that prompt and they contextualize it in terms of their broader training. So in other words, if I was a little bit more emotional in my prompt, if maybe I demanded that they explicitly write a lengthy kind of excerpt for a county audience on a particular topic, it may approach it entirely differently from if I asked it more casually. And what's notable there is that as you prompt generative AI tools to perform particular tasks or functions, they may operate a little bit differently. No two tools are exactly the same. So if you're using a method that's maybe tried and true, or maybe you believe it to be so in one tool, you want to have the context that maybe that may not be the case in another tool, and that kind of provides the context behind prompts. There are a few other definitions here. I don't want to take too much time to go into each, but elements such as large language models and then machine learning, these are really concepts that really form the foundation of generative AI models. So for large language models, this is a category of models that are pre-trained on really vast amounts of data, thus the name, and it makes these tools very quick in understanding and generating natural language that appears to us to be very fluid and in line with maybe a vernacular of what we would be used to. This is oftentimes because of the training. And when we shift over to things like machine learning, and this is really a subfield of AI, but it focuses on the use of data and algorithms to create models that enable machines to perform human-like functions. So over time, these machines can really operate in the same way that maybe a human did in a certain kind of simple task in order to kind of take over some of that mundane or repetitive work on behalf of humans. So there are other concepts here, happy to kind of explore these, but what I'm much more eager to kind of get into and share with you all are some of the findings that NACO has compiled across our last year. So NACO launched an artificial intelligence exploratory committee, and we sought out in our charter to really get a landscape for how county governments are approaching this topic, very similarly so to how the Board of Supervisors is doing so here today. And here are a series of numbers that we found across the country. This was actually a report that we put out at the beginning of this year, so we do believe these numbers are maybe even a bit outdated, but we found that of the counties that we surveyed, over a quarter of them had developed some sort of task force to study and analyze generative AI, both the landscape but also its relation to county government. We saw over a tenth of counties actually already have a policy out on how generative AI can be used both internally by the county departments and staff, but also externally in thinking about permissible use. We saw that over 32% of respondents indicated that their county sees generative AI as a tool to potentially address public sector workforce issues. And this was specifically context around capacity needs. So areas where counties or their local governments may be seeking to hire or trying to compete in a competitive job market, but there's the potential for generative AI to kind of help address some of those issues in relation to capacity. We saw that 20% of respondents had already planned in their upcoming county budget under the technology subdivision to budget fiscal dollars towards generative AI tools and or resources. And then again, about 20% of respondents indicated that their state actually provides guidance already on generative AI use to local government officials. And we'll circle back to the state guidance piece in just a bit. But the committee, in terms of conducting its landscape survey, found many of these findings to be very insightful. And I'll get into some of our key recommendations that the committee made as a whole in just a minute. But switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about the policy landscape. So as it stands right now, the federal government is making advances in constructing a framework for artificial intelligence and generative AI in particular. And you'll see a few notable milestones along that journey here. So starting on your left, you'll see what is a working paper that emerged out of the bipartisan Senate AI working group. So this was a working group in the U.S. Senate that was formed about 2 years ago by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and then Senators Mike Round, Martin Heinrich, and Todd Young. And the goal here was to develop a series of principles and standards for how the U.S. can drive innovation using artificial intelligence. And there was a specific focus on generative AI. And this working group, although not a formal piece of legislation, is really serving as a preamble for a lot of the different individual bills that we're now seeing proposed in Congress. It's worth noting that as it stands today, there is not a single federal law that has been passed by Congress and signed by the president that formally regulates generative AI or artificial intelligence on a large scale, but there are beginning to emerge many individual legislative proposals that may focus on a number of key areas. So an example is we've seen a number of Senate bills as well as bills in the House that have focused particularly on negative use cases associated with AI and generative AI. So an example here would be the non-consensual distribution of sensitive or intimate images. There are other examples in which the nefarious use of generative AI, there's an attempt to set rules and clear boundaries around what is and is not permissible. But we are continuing to track those pieces of legislation. We are coming up on the end of a congressional session here, given it's an election year. And while it is not clear that Congress will pass a single vehicle regulating generative AI or AI broadly, that there are several individual proposals. I'll quickly touch on these other two resources here, which are not related to the legislative branch, but come from the executive branch. The first is a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. This was put together by the White House almost 2 years ago, I think to the month. And what this did was establish essentially Bill of Rights for how AI can be deployed ethically and equitably. And the goal here is to encourage providers and innovators that are using AI and generative AI technologies to adhere to a set of standards that would allow them to preserve the fundamental rights of humanity while also hoping to foster innovation in the process. And then on the right-hand side here, this is a framework that is continuing to be renewed. It comes out of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it is the Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework. And this is much more so focused on the applications of AI and generative AI. The goal is to lay over those applications a clear framework for how you should be managing risk as an operator or an owner of a generative AI tool or model or function. So this is, again, this is steered towards developers or different institutions that are using these AI tools and providing them with a clear framework of how they can manage risk. And this is coming out of the Department of Commerce. So shifting down from the federal level to state and local, we're seeing a variety of initiatives begin to pop up, and this is a resource that does not come from NACO, but it comes from GovTech. And I wanted to show it here because it's beginning to provide a good visual of some of the different progress that states are making. So you'll see this tracker has actually 8 different views, but I chose to focus on the legislative AI authorizations to really demonstrate that we're seeing almost a fifth of the nation's states begin to move forward on legislative frameworks for AI. And this is particularly notable, as I mentioned in the previous slide, since we lack currently a federal framework and law around regulating AI. So you're going to begin to see individual states take action, and that does include the state of California. So I mentioned our Artificial Intelligence Exploratory Committee and a lot of our work. So I'll spend the last few minutes of my presentation here just sharing some key insights from our Exploratory Committee. And then, of course, I'm happy to take any questions from the board or from others. But our committee really focused on 4 key questions. And they were kind of spread out across 4 different sections. So the first was, how will counties approach things like data governance and the security of sensitive information in the application of AI tools? Secondly, how will the online landscape shift as generative AI content continues to emerge? And more specifically, how will government and industry learn to ethically apply AI solutions? Third, what standards, guidelines, and policies should counties consider as they approach the topic of generative AI? And then lastly, how will counties approach AI with regards to the public sector workforce? So this brings me to NACO's AI County Compass. Now, we'll be happy to send a link and follow-up, as well as printed copies if that would be helpful for the board. I have a QR code here as well that links to our toolkit, which is online. But this was a toolkit published by the AI Exploratory Committee in July that's set to establish recommendations across those 4 key areas. And I encourage you to take a look at the toolkit to review those recommendations. But I wanted to highlight under each section an example of what another county is doing. In the event that this may be instructive or helpful for how the board is approaching the study of AI and generative AI. And I want to start with promoting policy models. So this is a policy framework that was put together by the County of Santa Cruz, and these were adopted last year by the board, and it established 6 key areas in which the county wanted to establish policy. So the first was data privacy and security. So they knew upfront that they wanted staff to ensure that they would comply with all data privacy and security standards, including protecting PII and protected health information, if they were going to use a generative AI tool. So a good example is if you want to use a publicly available tool as a staffer, you cannot input sensitive data into that model because there's a clear risk that by doing so, you are exposing that information to a much broader base. The second key policy point here was informed consent. So members of the public, if they interact with an AI tool or resource that is being provided by the county, should be informed when they are interacting with an AI tool, and they should also be given an opt-out alternative. So a good example here is if the county offers a chatbot service on your website that is maybe guiding residents to the right county operation or service that they're looking for. If you are using AI or generative AI for that, perhaps under this policy, you would be disclosing that upfront for the resident, and you would be giving them an opt-out alternative to maybe speak with a live representative or to access something that is more accessible based under this framework. The third is responsible use, so AI tools and systems only being used in an ethical manner, avoiding bias, so monitoring for bias in outputs from models when you deploy them, decision-making, so tools should not be used actually to make decisions on the behalf of the county, and this speaks to kind of the role of staff and humans in making decisions as opposed to automating those decisions. And then accountability. So employees are solely responsible for ensuring that the quality, accuracy, and regulatory compliance of all content that they publish using generative AI is considered, and they bear responsibility. So that was the first example I wanted to share on policy models. With respect to establishing an ethical framework, I draw out the county of Miami-Dade in Florida as a really good example of how they enshrined some key ethical principles into their broader approach to artificial intelligence. And this is a county that is encountering AI in areas as varied from their transportation sector onwards, but they wanted a key set of ethical principles to follow as the county kind of put together their artificial intelligence report and their principles for use across county operations. And this is actually a report that you can access in full on our toolkit. So enabling responsible applications, I draw two county examples here. The first is Cook County in Illinois, who through their Bureau of Technology strategic plan, they have outlined how they are approaching this new sector of generative AI. They are taking a holistic view about how generative AI tools will interact with county data sets and systems. And the goal is to make a robust effort to ensure that county data will remain secure and safe as the county moves forward in evaluating in what ways they would like to use generative AI to enhance or augment some of the services that they offer to their residents. And in the second example here, this is more of a kind of a best practice story around how AI was deployed positively. This comes from Douglas County, Nebraska. And I'll say that this is not even necessarily strictly a generative AI example, but essentially the county utilized drone footage to conduct a full inventory of their ADA curb ramps. And this saved significant time in terms of staff time as well as dollars. It also conducted the analysis in a fraction of the time that it would have otherwise taken had they had to go out to each corner and individually survey whether or not an ADA curb ramp existed or was in compliance. And it was a good example of how AI is being leveraged specifically to kind of reframe how the workforce is approaching some key projects and issues. And then I believe this is my last slide. Again, I want to be mindful of time. But preparing the workforce, as I mentioned, was our last section of the toolkit. And I thought this graphic really adequately summarized what is contained within the workforce section of this report, which is that the advent of generative AI tools, and as they come into our society, but also before county governments, this will really involve change management with the public sector workforce. So really viewing some of these tools and technologies as ways to augment existing functions, opportunities for reskilling. This is a process that will take time. We've noted in earlier parts of our toolkit and our presentation that the kind of time frame for adopting to generative AI can take time. So how do you approach that educational experience with your staff? You look in for resources, develop a curriculum that can address questions as you begin to build a policy, and over time, helping the public sector workforce really transition and adopt to what this new landscape looks like in terms of technology. So with that, I will conclude. My colleague, Rita Reynolds, who is the Chief Information Officer at NACO, was equally instrumental in a lot of this work as some of our members. And we would both be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. But with that, thank you so much for your time, and I will pass it back over to the group.
Thank you, Seamus. And I know that I have a lot of questions. We're going to our counties. David has been instrumental. Counties operation has helped us. David, I'm going to I want
absolutely, I will
that we're doing together. So thank you.
Vargas and Supervisor critically important topic. Presentations. Approach to generative. I'll start with the first. Initially, there are three general areas where AI is commonly discuss those today, but those are human-like engagement, automating and optimizing, and generating insight. The county is exploring AI in each of these areas. AI has taken the technology industry by storm. Nearly every product offered now includes some component of AI, generally within the broad three categories just discussed. Counties and other public entities around the country are exploring various opportunities to implement AI, including the County of San Diego. As you'll see on this slide, Gartner Consulting has summarized what its research has determined are the top Gen AI uses by public sector executives and those that they are exploring. Those include case summarization and insight, the idea that, for example, a caseworker, a county caseworker, could use AI to summarize information, analyze that information, and search that complex data for key insights. Enhance public services. Similarly, they could do something in this area like create robust chatbots or automated audio response systems, and I'll talk a little bit about a way that county council is using it to look at video later in the presentation. Counties are looking at interaction triaging. This would be an example where they would look at ways to prioritize questions or items coming into the county, or for processing county activities. So, for example, someone could apply for a county permit online, perhaps being guided through the application by an AI-powered chatbot. Once the application is submitted, AI could check for its completeness, cause an email to be sent to the applicant if the additional information is required, or perhaps just a status update, and then forward that packet to the planner for review. AI could even summarize the application and provide other information necessary for the planner's decision. We use it for briefing notes, and we're expecting to do that as others throughout the country are, and then also for training and preparedness. AI offers an opportunity to take large volumes of information for specific programs and prepare very sophisticated and useful trainings at a low cost and quick efficiency to do so. I'd like to now turn to some specific examples of where the county is using AI or preparing to use AI. The first is Microsoft's AI offering, which it calls Copilot. The county is working with Microsoft on two distinct Microsoft products, both called Copilot, so it can get a little bit confusing. The first we're working with them is to integrate it into the county's Microsoft Office environment. Microsoft Office environment includes your Office Outlook, your Word, your email, calendar, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and Microsoft 365. M365 Copilot for Office only uses internal county data, meaning that it does not go outside the county environment to gather data or information. This is important because one of the critical issues with AI, as previous speakers have mentioned, is confidentiality. Here, we've been in close contact with Microsoft to understand its use of AI within the Office environment. Why does this matter? One of the really helpful things AI can do is draft or edit a document. So, for example, a caseworker may be writing a report to submit to a court in some sort of confidential matter. M365 Copilot for Office can assist in writing that report. The caseworker would then input all of that relevant information and even a basic draft report. They could then have Copilot draft the report in a certain format, style, language, or reading level. The caseworker would then edit and finalize the document, saving the worker time and effort and improving the quality of the work. The concern, however, is whether any of the information the caseworker included in the report would be accessible outside the county system. Microsoft has been working hard to make sure that this will not happen, and the county is carefully reviewing with Microsoft and M365 Copilot to ensure that this information remains confidential. M365 Copilot for Office is an additional per-user charge from Microsoft, so the county will be deploying it at the department level to users as necessary. But the good news is that's not the only AI product that we're looking at with Microsoft. The second one, which comes without an additional charge, is something called M365 Copilot Web Experience, and that's anticipated to be released in Q2 of next year. This is quite similar to the ChatGPT product you saw in the first presentation, and in fact uses a lot of the same modeling as they have an agreement between the two companies. The CTO will work with county departments to make this available sometime next year. In addition to Microsoft, the county has worked with AWS to create a product called, or to create a virtual assistant based on AWS's Claude product. Claude is also similar to ChatGPT or similar to the Microsoft Copilot product. This too preserves and protects county confidential information and will be made available to county employees. What can you do with either ChatGPT or something like, or Copilot or Claude? Well, you could write a new email use policy, for example, or you could summarize an area of California law. A county employee could refer to a county website just by putting in the URL, and then the Claude would take that information and could summarize it and prepare some sort of advertising campaign or additional information on it. Lots of different opportunities. If the county were looking to go out and procure a new service, say a new permitting system, we could use it to perhaps create an initial draft of a statement of work, saving county time and effort of county employees. As we previously discussed, the county will be making available various tools from both Microsoft and AWS for county employee use. In addition to Microsoft's Copilots and AWS's Claude 3, the county has also started exploring AI use in other areas. For example, rewriting county websites. We developed a tool to identify potholes on county roads I'm going to talk about in a moment, and then a data lake that we think is going to allow county staff to analyze data and make better informed decisions. The first project I'd mention is something known as Rover AI. This was a proof of concept for the Department of Public Works. Rover AI identifies infrastructure issues, primarily potholes in the right-of-way. It does so by capturing the video from cameras mounted on DPW vehicles. Rover AI analyzes the video and generates a list, including location and information about the potential pothole that county staff then review and add to the work plan to repair the potholes. Rover AI leverages existing field staff who are already driving county roads for other road maintenance activities. DPW is now looking at ways to operationalize Rover AI. Ultimately, this may allow DPW to use its existing workforce and road workers conducting their regular work to collect the data rather than retaining an outside vendor to drive thousands of miles of county road every few years. The next project I'll mention briefly is the County Council project I talked about. Here, we're working with Google to work with and County Council to look for an opportunity to take the large videos and audio recordings that they have for litigation and use AI to summarize it, transcribe it, redact it, and help put together presentations for court presentations and things like that. County Council is also using this to redact audio and video for production and discovery and use at trial. Finally, I'd like to talk about a really exciting and innovative project we've undertaken called the Enterprise Integrated Data Platform, or as we like to refer to it, the Data Lake. We created the Data Lake to allow the county to perform better data analytics. Part of this was in response to lessons learned from the pandemic when we had to reach out to many disparate systems and parse through data in real time, and where delays could have had major consequences. The Data Lake offers a means to quickly, efficiently, and in a cost-effective way aggregate and analyze large amounts of data. So, what can we do with the Data Lake? One current use is in support of staff's implementation of Chairwoman Vargas's and Supervisor Anderson's April 30, 2024 direction to staff to, among other things, look to enhance the ability of local and small businesses to contract with the county. Using the Data Lake, we are aggregating and analyzing data to help develop ways to meet this direction, and then we'll use the Data Lake to monitor our progress, keeping ourselves accountable to the board and to the public, and course correct as needed. Finally, what are the next steps for the county? Well, the first is that we will need to develop an AI policy, and we are fortunate to have this committee meeting now because we look forward to taking direction from this subcommittee to develop and issue guidelines on the policy, to develop the policy and then subsequently issue both guidelines from it for specific groups within the county, a risk management framework. And then we also look forward to executing future pilots, and public-facing AI initiatives. One comment on the public-facing AI initiatives, we have been slow to do that in part because we want to be extra careful not to take any chance to risk the safety of public data or the constituents of the County of San Diego. With that, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I know that today we to make sure that we get overall at NACO, the National Association of Counties, and also be able to share some of the work that is already taking place in the county. And I know both working, looking at this and moving forward to have a county policy. I am interested, David, in asking how, I know we engaging our different stakeholders in this process, because I'm interested in as we move forward. So today we had a sure that as we move forward, human resources and all, to me that all of the data that I've read and all of the folks who are information technology and all, because you've worked in different entities. How do we make sure that this doesn't become a technology issue? I think for me that would be a very policy. So we're giving these spaces so that we can have conversation, also to hear back. There's an opportunity for community to provide feedback, et cetera. And we're going to have another committee meeting discussion. But as people are thinking about this, what are the engaging our stakeholders internally?
Thank you for that question, Chairwoman Vargas. A couple of I and members of my staff have been going out and meeting with county departments, providing presentations. Couple of times, county leadership. We've met with various, like I said, departments and groups and things like that to get their perspective. For the county, the leadership team, and I discuss AI issues with them. As it relates to labor, I've spoken about this and are keeping an eye on any potential issues that would require the unions and organized labor. My understanding is the next committee meeting will have a labor component. We've been keeping an eye on how this is developing in this concept of what impact it will have on the workforce. Making it more efficient and helping people do their work and understand that to opportunities to for more engagement, and in particular the Engage San Diego part as well.
Supervisor.
Rover program, appropriated area. At first, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you. Three different be a labor component. Hours for actually enhancing and making their. It's exciting to see. You're suggesting that when we're dealing with homeless at the that we're on and the pot make great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that him and his that we were able to have this. Those that joined will be able to gather this information. Other thoughts that you may have to the county that we're able to gather your information.
Chairwoman, also live, and we've been sending it out, available for folks to provide feedback.
Well, thank you very much. To continue the conversation with all of